This video will be a walkthrough for the 2019 AP English Language Synthesis prompt, which dealt with wind power and the effects of wind energy. So any synthesis prompt has 3 paragraphs to it. The first paragraph will always be background information, as we see here. The second paragraph, which we'll see in just a second, is the actual prompt that gives us the task that we're writing about. And the third paragraph will be instructions. The third paragraph never changes. So if you've read in practice the third paragraph and the instructions practicing up to the AP exam, there's really no reason to read that, to spend time reading that on the AP exam. You can save yourself a minute there and transfer that time to writing, because it never changes. The instructions are always the same. So reading the background information for the wind power prompt: in response to our society's increasing demand for energy, large-scale wind power has drawn attention from governments and consumers as a potential alternative to traditional materials that fuel our power grids, such as coal, oil, natural gas, water, or even newer sources such as nuclear or solar power. Yet the establishment of large-scale commercial-grade wind farms is often the subject of controversy for a variety of reasons. The College Board is giving you this information because they do not think that students have sat around and thought about wind power before. This is not a topic of conversation at cafeteria tables, at lunchtimes in high school. And so the College Board wants to provide a little background information, but also this is the information that you'll need to write your introduction. So with the exception of your position, which is the most important part of your introduction, you can gather the 2 or 3 sentences that you need to write in your introduction just from this background information. Then comes the prompt. Carefully read the following 6 sources, including the introductory information for each source. Then synthesize material from at least 3 of the sources and incorporate it into a coherent, well-written essay in which you develop your position on the most important factors that an individual or agency should consider when deciding whether to establish a wind farm. So again, this is not a simple agree, disagree prompt, right? They want you to look at the most important factors that an individual or agency should consider. Where do you get those factors from? You will get those factors from the sources that follow the prompt. And again, it says here that there are 6 of them. So the sources will give you the different factors that you might consider. And then from the factors that the sources deliver, you are choosing the most important factors. Now, again, it's kind of assumed that we're going to build the wind farms. That's an assumption. So you can't have a position that says wind farms are bad, we shouldn't build them. That's not a potential position here. We have to admit that we're going to build the wind farms. Now, what are the factors that we will be focusing on as we build them? And without even looking at the sources, like one factor might be noise, right? Another factor might be the ugliness of the wind farm. Another factor might be the way they interact with like birds, for example, that could end up flying into the wind farms. So we can come up with some factors ahead of time, but the sources will solidify those factors and give us more specificity as to those factors. Then the third paragraph always is going to be the directions. I'm not going to read these to you because, again, they are always the same, but it just gives you the basic instructions. So my final slide is some synthesis tips, and these pretty much go for just about any synthesis essay that you would end up writing for the College Board. But again, you want to pay attention to words like factors and value. We don't want to see the synthesis essay as a simple agree, disagree essay. It is rarely that. It's more nuanced than that. In this case, the word factors was used, and that's the word that we need to focus on, and probably use that word throughout the body and in our position statement, in our thesis statement. We need to remember that positions are opinions with reasons. So simply stating there are several factors that we should consider when thinking about wind farms is not a position. We need to give a reason for why, or list the actual factors. That would do the trick as well. So if you want to pick up that 1 point in the thesis column on the AP rubric, we need to again come up with reasons that for our opinion, and then we transform the opinion into a position. And the word position is used on the College Board's rubric. So I know that in the task it said carefully read all 6 sources, and I don't agree with that. I think that, again, you have 135 minutes to write 3 timed writings. This is just one of the 3. And so we want to transfer as much time from the reading as we can to the writing. And I think the number one way to transfer time from reading to writing is to cut down on the amount of time we spend reading the sources. So we know that we have to use 3 sources, and we know that they've given us 6. And we also know that there is no bonus point given for using more than 3 sources. So my argument would be, let's spend more time analyzing 3 sources rather than attempting to use more than 3 sources. And if we only need 3, then we might only have to read 3. So I would argue, let's read them, instead of reading A, B, C, D, E, F, let's read them in order from shortest to longest. So one of the sources, at least one, is always going to be a picture of some sort. It might be a photograph, it might be a cartoon, it might be a graph. Usually even more than one will come in that form. So if we look at the photo, for the wind farms, it was a photo of wind farms. If we look at that photo and we know that we can use that photo as one of our sources, then we've got one. And then we move on to the second, whatever is shortest. And I think for wind farms, it's a bar graph. And if we look at that bar graph and we know that we can use that bar graph as one of our sources, then we look at the next one. Now, the third shortest is almost definitely going to have words in it. So you start to read the shortest source, and as soon as you know that you can use that source, you cherry pick a sentence out of that source, or you cherry pick a paragraph out of that source, you could be done reading that too. So the College Board has allotted 15 minutes, in their opinion, for you to read these sources. If you can read the sources in 5 minutes or less, that's 10 more minutes that you can spend writing on the various prompts that you're given. I do think, another tip, and this isn't just for synthesis, this is for the exam, they give you 135 minutes, and I do not think there is any such thing as finishing early. I think that if they gave you 270 minutes, you should write for 270 minutes. If they give you 135 minutes, it's because they expect you to write for 135 minutes. When students finish early, to me, that means they haven't done their best, because they shouldn't be finishing early. You should be using all of your time that the College Board has given you. They're not giving you any more time than they think you need, because they are not giving away college credit. College courses cost a lot of money. They are not giving this college credit away. They are going to work you to the bone to get this college credit. So you need to use every single minute that you can. So if we read the sources from shortest to longest, once we get to 3, we can be done. Now, you might think to yourself, well, what if all of those sources don't necessarily agree with my position? That's where counter argument comes in. And we might counter argue, this is the last bullet on this slide, but we might counter argue in a body paragraph. We might counter argue in the conclusion. I think that's one of the best ways to set yourself up to get the sophistication point, which is in column C of the rubric, is to write a counter argument, the antithesis of your position. But what we have to do, we can't just state the counter argument and then fall back on our position. We have to state the counter argument and then continue to explain why that counter argument doesn't work as well as our position. Your position is paramount, and the sources are there to support your position. So this is another error that I think students will make sometimes, is that in the body paragraphs, they begin their body with the source. And I don't think that's a good idea, because usually whatever our topic sentence is, it's going to probably be the first sentence of the paragraph. And whatever our topic sentence is going to be what we focus on. So if we make our topic sentence the source, if it's a quote from the source or a paraphrase of the source, then our paragraph is probably going to focus on that source. And that is not what we want to do. The synthesis timed writing, as I have in the second to last bullet, is an argument timed writing with sources. This is a personal opinion paper. This is a personal opinion timed writing. They want your personal experience brought into this timed writing. So if you start with the source and you just discuss the source, that is a clear way to not get a qualifying score on this particular timed writing. You want to start with your position. You want to start with a reason for your position, and then the source comes in after your thoughts, after your personal experiences, after your reasons as support for your position. Your ideas come first, and the sources get sprinkled in to support your ideas, but the sources themselves are not your ideas. They've been given to you. And another thing that we need to remember is that the AP readers in Cincinnati who will read these essays have read the sources literally hundreds of times. So they don't need you to tell them about the source. They need that a little bit, but only enough so that they can understand your idea about the source. That's what they haven't read. They haven't read your analysis of the source. They haven't read your synthesis of two sources together. They haven't read your synthesis of your idea and the source. That's what the paragraph absolutely must be packed with. It must be packed with those ideas, your ideas on the position of wind farms in this case, your ideas on the position of the post office on another previous prompt, or the importance of libraries in another previous prompt. But in this case, on the factors that go into considering how we develop wind farms. That is the most important thing, and the sources are secondary and get sprinkled in. And I think that's about all I want to say about this particular prompt. So hopefully some of these comments will help walk you through the wind farm prompt, and you'll be able to revise some timed writings that you've already written based on these comments.